up, YouTube? Ryan Panny here. Hope you guys are doing reasonably well. It is time for a review of the new Killswitch Engage record, Atonement, out this past Friday, August 16th. Killswitch Engage back with their first record in almost 3.5 years now, titled Atonement, which if you go back a couple years in this channel to my top 10 metal albums of 2017, if you are a metal band making an album and calling it Atonement, this means that you are competing with a pretty superb immolation record. Just saying. Title competitions are a thing, I'm sorry. When Jay-Z came out with the Black Album in 2003, he was going up against literally the top-selling album of the Nielsen SoundScan era. Like, that's a thing. And the Black Album turned out to be great, so there are allowed to be 2 Black Albums, but if it wasn't... Anyway, this is the band's first album for Brian Slagel's legendary Metal Blade Records since they made the switch from Roadrunner, and it's also their 3rd album since original frontman Jesse Leach rejoined the band in 2012. And I've had some really positive things to say about both the albums that have come out since Jesse rejoined, 2013's Disarm the Descent and 2016's Incarnate, which was even better. And you can watch the review I did of that if you'd like. And I've even gone as far as to say, somewhat unconventionally, that both these albums are better than all 3 of the albums from the Howard Jones era. But I gotta say, based on the singles so far that have been released for Atonement, I've been kind of worried that we're headed into another 3rd album curse for Killswitch, not unlike the disastrous 2009 self-titled album, where simultaneously the band ran out of riffs and Howard ran out of lyrics, and the result was not pretty. You know, I'm kind of seeing a similar pattern here, where 2013's Disarm the Descent really revved up fans' excitement for the band with Jesse's return and all that, and then Incarnate after that improved upon some of that record and expanded upon other parts. And so now with album number 3 of the Leach era 2.0, where does Killswitch's sound go? Hopefully new territory. And the singles didn't sound like new territory to me. If you saw my track review of the album opener and lead single Unleashed, you know I was pretty lukewarm on that. I felt slightly better about the emotionally weighty second single, I Am Broken Too. Although upon repeated listening, I've kind of flipped negative on it because of just that super weak guitar intro, and there's just not a lot going on instrumentally. But of course, 2 out of 11 songs, or 18% of an album, out of context, mind you, is not nearly enough for me to be dragging any preconceived notions into this review. So I've gone to this record with my mind completely open at the possibility of another Alive or Just Breathing, another End of Heartache, another pivotal release in the Killswitch catalog. Well, you can imagine my disappointment when I was greeted with, on the bulk of this album, bland, derivative, at times listless Killswitch material. And apologies to my viewers. I'm sure a lot of you love this album. I'm sure most of you love this album. And I would love to be you, but I'm not. You know, I was re-listening to Incarnate at the gym on Friday, the day this came out, you know, instead of Atonement, which probably should have been my first sign. That album was fucking awesome. That album would have been basically flawless if it ended at track 10, which is The Great Deceit. So now if you take just those 10 tracks off Incarnate, that makes it a comparable length to Atonement, which is slightly shorter. And boy, you listen to these 2 chunks of material back to back, I promise you, you will hear the difference. Wow. You will hear that in comparison, the majority of this album is boring. Not bad, but boring. Just unexciting. Exhibit A for me, and one of many examples, probably the worst example, is Us Against the World, which is a song that, a lot like I Am Broken Too, kicks off with this real weak and flaccid little guitar melody that is just so fucking lazy, and in the way that it just follows the equally dull power chords that are being played underneath it. Rhythmically, it's just the same thing. And from there, this song is just so robotic and so uninspired in its execution and its arrangement. It just feels like the band went, all right, here's where we put our uplifting chorus. Here's where we put our pull-off riffs that we love so much, especially on this album. Oh, and here's where we stick that little bridge in so it sounds like there aren't just 2 parts to the whole song. It's so hard for me to listen to. Ironically, a song like this that's just so, is kind of harder to listen to than just a song that's bad. Unless it's that fucking Lizzo song that's on the radio right now. Oh my God. I Can't Be the Only One. That's another track that I find boring and just wimpy. Just wimpy. It's got this incredibly nauseating, sugary chorus. Like, I mean that even by Killswitch Engage and by metalcore standards. The guitar solo in this song would have been great until Adam D completely ruins it with this real unwelcome, stock, minor pentatonic rock lick that just has no place in the fucking solo. And I should mention that he makes that exact same mistake earlier in the record on the Signal Fire solo. I guess lead guitar on this album was not exactly a priority. And when you listen to like the Times of Grace album, for instance, versus this, come on, man, what were these solos composed in 5 minutes? Ravenous is another one that I don't like. Ravenous is a track that feels just real skeletal in the sense that it's composed of basically 3 decent riffs and then this like uber melodic chorus that's just parachuted in twice out of nowhere. Lazy writing, man. Lazy writing. The band are really coasting here. Where is the ambition? Just listen back to songs on Incarnate like Embrace the Journey or It Falls on Me. These are songs that had some really cool changes. They weren't like these prog epics or anything, but they had some dynamics to them, I guess. And now take those tracks and find me anything comparable on Atonement. I'll wait. Now, that being said, in the shaking things up category, I will say that the 2 tracks I was most curious and most excited and most intrigued to hear were the 2 feature tracks. Signal Fire with Howard Jones and Crown This King with Chuck Billy from Testament. These are tracks that right at midnight when this record came out, I immediately skipped to. Obviously hearing Howard back and collaborating with the guys is a cool prospect, but particularly Chuck Billy because thrash metal is not exactly what Killswitch play. So just wanted to hear how that sounded. Signal Fire is cool. It's aggressive. It's high octane. But wow, I am so fucking disappointed by how drastically underutilized Howard is in this song. His appearance amounts to basically what in hip hop would be a 16-bar guest verse. This is especially maddening when you consider that the big difference, the major difference between Jesse and Howard is that Howard is just a much better clean singer. Like from a technical standpoint. Give the guy a fucking chorus. He's barely noticeable in that chorus mix. I'm sorry. Very frustrating. And with the Crown This King, it's definitely rewarding to hear Killswitch leaning into more of those chunky thrash riffs that have always been a portion of their sound, but never been as prominent. And speaking of prominence, Chuck Billy definitely has a bigger role in this song than Howard did on the Signal Fire. Although I will say hearing Chuck Billy in the middle of a Killswitch song kind of just makes me want to go back and re-listen to that First Strike Still Deadly remake album or Dark Roots of Earth, or The Gathering, anything in that latter half of the Testament catalog, which, by the way, The Gathering may or may not be a video that is coming on a certain channel on YouTube, because that record is fucking amazing. I will say this, as a vocalist, Jesse Leach still sounds awesome on Atonement, and I know he went through not only some vocal problems, but some personal problems in between records here, but he sounds better than ever, actually. His screaming voice especially. The rest of the members kind of sound like they're going through their motions, but Jesse Leach as a performer, I cannot take anything away from. I can, however, take issue with some of these super repetitive lyrical themes. My goodness. Think about it. Crown This King, Us Against the World, Take Control, Know Your Enemy, To an Extent, Bite the Hand That Feeds. These all revolve around the same fucking themes. Some variation of rebellion, fighting back against the system, self-empowerment, overcoming, which, speaking of overcoming, the track As Sure as the Sun Will Rise, which does also feature these familiar lyrical themes, is one of the few real highlights musically. I fucking love this track. It's one of the few that I find myself coming back to voluntarily. It's so dynamic in the way that it explodes from halftime groovy verse to chaotic tremolo picked pre-chorus to, not to be corny and reference the title, but the clouds breaking for a beautiful call and response chorus. I love the come down in the bridge as well. This song is just classic Killswitch. And classic simple Killswitch, because I don't want my opinions here to be misconstrued and that I'm criticizing these other songs for just being, just on the basis of them being not made up of a lot of moving parts. That's not essentially true. It's the way the parts are sandwiched together. This is a song that's very concise and very straightforward, very to the point, and it's one of the best on the record. The best song on the record, though, for me is Bite the Hand That Feeds, with its blistering extreme metal influence passages, and lyrically it's, to my ears, this political rallying cry, which ends in Leach bluntly asking listeners, what would you die for? What would you kill for? You know, I really wish that Killswitch had cranked up the aggression like this on the majority of this album. I really think that this suits them well. When Killswitch Engage's music starts to lean just slightly towards the extremity side of things, there are good results. Think back to The Great Deceit, which I mentioned before on Incarnate. And Bite the Hand That Feeds is a great send-off on this record, but it's kind of bittersweet in that it's this little flash of potential right before the record ends. I also enjoyed the track Know Your Enemy for the record, and also despite the song sounding like 10 years old in a bad way, I also think the chorus to Take Control is decent, but that's pretty much it. So look, if you're approaching this record as a Killswitch fanatic, and you're trying to like it, and you're trying to extract positives from it, there will be plenty for you here. definitely. It's not quite like the self-titled record, which kind of kicks you in the teeth for trying to like it. But if you're coming at it like I am, which is wanting to see the band improve upon or at least maintain the previous two records, this is a painfully average, painfully middling Killswitch record. I'm sorry, but it just is. I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but we'll get through it, I promise. Atonement gets a 5 out of 10 from me. As always, thanks so much for watching, guys. If you enjoyed this video and are not yet subscribed to my channel, please consider doing so by clicking right over here, as well as checking out any of the other rock or metal related content that I publish on this channel on a weekly basis. Really appreciate you watching, liking, disliking, probably, engaging in any way, commenting. Twitter, Instagram handle @RyanPannyMusic. Again, thank you so much for watching, and I will see you guys soon.